Today, on the Weekly Remind, I bring you the case of Jessica Edith Louise Foster, missing from Las Vegas, Nevada on March 28, 2006. Jessie, as she's known to her mother and family, is a beautiful, smart young woman, a wonderful big sister, and now, like thousands that go missing each year, are thrust into modern day slavery of human sex trafficking. For this episode, I had the privilege to speak with Jessie's mom, Gleneden. Not only is she mom, she's an advocate for her daughter. She's a founding member of MATH, which stands for Mothers Against Trafficking Humans, and she will tell you the lead detective in Jessie's case. Gleneden has also been part of law-changing measures in Canada. This is a powerful interview, which I felt needed to be played in its entirety. This is a story not only of a mother who misses her daughter, but a mother who has become an unstoppable force in that fights to find Jessie. Let's get into it. I watched that documentary that was done, which I thought was beautiful, by the way.
Vanishing Point.
Yes, it was beautifully done, and it went into detail, not just about the feelings you guys had with what was going on with Jessica. What do you guys?
We call her Jessie.
Jessie, okay. And I just thought, man, it just seemed like this whole story is not getting the attention it needs. Especially, I am a big anti-human trafficker, especially children. That is. But as I'm looking into her case, I think that this is the kind of thing that needs to be smack in your face all over the place, not only to bring these young women home and some men too, but it also needs so that we can protect other people that don't get persuaded in this direction, or because they're so everybody can be vulnerable, especially if you're in a place. So I wanted to start out with, if you could just start out with the type of young lady Jessie is, and the type of person, the things that she loved to do.
Okay. Well, like I had mentioned, Jessie's my second of four children. I have four daughters, and was always very popular and outgoing. And when we moved back to Kamloops, where I live now, from Calgary, it was back to a smaller city, back from Calgary of 1 million to Kamloops of maybe 70,000 back then. So it was quite a different place to want to raise kids in, and I just felt more comfortable at the time, having a couple girls and not wanting to. Not even thinking of human trafficking, just wanting to not have such a large city for me to have to care for them in. So when we moved back here, we moved into a home that was a block and a half from the house I grew up in. The neighborhood, the community, the same families, just generation down now. The same school I went to, the elementary school, was across the street from our home, the high school just up the road. So as Jessie started into school, we moved into that house when she was 3. As she started into school, she started right in kindergarten. She was in French immersion because we're in Canada, and that is an option that we have. And I ended, after having 4 kids, they all started French immersion. My oldest and my youngest didn't even survive kindergarten. They ended up grade 1 English. And but Jessie went all the way through French immersion in elementary school to grade 6. And then she said she wanted to go into grade 7 for French. She wanted to get out of French for grade 7 and go into English, because she was choosing to go into English for high school. So at that time, she had the same kids in the same classrooms all through elementary school, from kindergarten through primary elementary, through intermediate elementary. And so by the time she went into grade 7, still all the same kids. It's just now she had a bit of a different classroom, and the kids that she hung out with were great kids, great kids. And to this day, for the most part, every one of them are great adults, great parents. She had one specific friend who lived out of town, so her mom would she would just drop by with bags of groceries and gift cards for grocery stores, because she'd say, you're feeding my kid all the time. And, we didn't mind, we
Right.
had the home that the kids hung out with, and that's how I wanted it. I didn't want to wonder where the kids were. I wanted to let all the parents know they're all fine, they're here.
Right.
And that's how it was with all the kids too, which I'm grateful for. So when, as Jessie started, growing up, well, I'll backtrack slightly. When she was in early elementary school, she was quite the tomboy. She always wore the layered clothing. She always had back then they were called mushroom haircuts, and she always had her hair short and cut like that. And we had a next door neighbor who, when I saw her years later, she said, I remember your kids. You had 3 little girls and a boy named Jessie, didn't you? And I laughed. I said, no, I have 4 girls. One is Jessie. But then as she started maturing a little bit, probably grade 6, you can even look in her school pictures. Her hair started getting a little bit longer, a little bit some makeup. She started wearing more shapely clothes instead of baggy, so you couldn't see any figure at all. She would wear things that showed her figure, and started becoming very girly. Got to be very good at makeup, very good at doing hair. She would do that for all her friends, not just herself. And for her sisters, as her sisters started growing up, she'd be the one, even if they weren't comfortable being all frilly and girly, she would make sure that their hair was done and their makeup was just right if they had something happening. And, she's just the greatest kid, so funny, always had the best sense of humor, which I will take full pride in, because I have a much better sense of humor than her dad did. And I find that, I must have passed that on to her.
Right.
I always mention 2 really off things, simply because, I talk about her being a little tomboy. I talk about her becoming very, dainty. But what happened that never changed was she had a couple of these little habits that everybody couldn't get enough of. One of them was belching. And by that, I mean, she could sing a song in a belch, do the alphabet, the whole thing. And as much as I would always say, Jessie, now I'm glad that I have those silly little memories, because they're fun, and the other one is a little more disgusting, if you can get worse than that. And that's where she could spit. And I swear she could spit across the road before it landed. And she hated that I would always give her heck for doing it, because she had the pride of, hey, well, I can. And now I feel the same way about it, like, me, I go to do it, it ends up on my chin, what can I say?
Right.
So, as she started maturing a little bit, and still I could hear the belching in the background. It always kind of made me laugh to know that, you can take the girl out of the woman, but you can't always, you can't take it all out. So, and then as she started high school, into junior high school, again, the same groups of friends. She started, she had always been in brownies and always been in guides, and always, loved sports all through her elementary school. But as she got into junior high school, she started more into taking dance lessons, not just, ballet. She was never interested in ballet or that type of dance, but she always wanted hip hop dancing and dances that were popular at that time. And she was always very, very good dancer. She always loved it. And so as she started even getting older, that love for her dancing and her love of hip hop dancing drew her into a love of going to clubs and having that type of fun lifestyle.
Right.
So as Jessie, when Jessie turned 16, she was in grade 11, and she had decided that well, she was in grade 10, I should say, and she had decided that she wanted to go back to Calgary. And the reason for that, her dad still lived there, her stepmom, 2 stepsisters, and she'd always lived with me, but vacationed with dad, and summer holidays and Christmases stuff. Her and her older sister would go with their dad. But she said I'd never lived with him. So for me to not know what it's like to, live under dad's roof as, resident, I really want to know that. In a couple of years, I'm going to be a grown up. And so her dad, Dwight, and I discussed it. And her reason was good. It wasn't just, I don't like mom's rules.
Right.
And it wasn't anything like that. It's, she wanted to go live with her dad. So she moved to Calgary, and she did grade 11 in Calgary under the idea that if she really liked it, she would stay on and graduate. And if she didn't, she'd come back and graduate with the kids that she grew up with all of her life. And she loved it. She loved the bigger city. She loved that there's so much to do. Entertainment in a place the size of Kamloops for youth is not, it does not run great. There's a lot of youth trouble here in Kamloops because of that. And whereas in a city the size of Calgary, it wasn't that way. So she stayed on, graduated, and after she graduated high school, she started dating a young guy named John, who he was a DJ, and he would do hip-hop shows around the city. And because of that was an interest of hers, she would go with him to these raves. And the age limit to go to clubs and things in Calgary, Alberta, is only 18 years old. It's 19 here in Kamloops, BC. I know 21 in a lot of the states in the United States, but it's only 18 years old in Calgary, which to me is extremely young.
Yeah.
But she would go, and she always would tell us about the fun times she had. And I remember this one time she told me about an incident that had happened at one of these raves, and somebody pulled out a weapon, pulled out a gun, and shots were fired, and it absolutely terrified me. And she just talked about it as if it was an excitement, something that was so cool to happen. And she had a story to tell, and it just just couldn't understand why she thought of it that way. But her bottom line was, I'm fine, everybody's fine, nobody got hurt. So then a few months later, Jessie decided she was going to come back to Kamloops. She had been graduated out of high school for some time. She'd been living on her own for some time. Her youngest sister here in Kamloops was having a little bit of trouble with hanging out with some of the wrong kids, and she just wanted to come and make sure that she was on the right track, and she didn't want anything to happen to one of her sisters. So she put a lot of her stuff into storage in Calgary, and she came back to Kamloops, and she moved back in with us. Everything went well with her sister, and Jessie ended up getting a couple of jobs. And one of them was at a Boston Pizza, and one of them was at a very high-class golf course. And she enjoyed both jobs. But while she was working those jobs, she started getting some phone calls from a fellow that she knew from Calgary. Now, just to kind of fast forward, or I'll recap slightly, I found out much later, but this fellow was the fellow who pulled out the gun at
At the club.
At that event. And had I known that, I don't know what I could have done, but I certainly would have tried to do something different. But that's just how,
so just
that's what I did find out.
Backtrack a little bit. So the gentleman that she was, that just called her up, was the same guy that pulled the gun out of this club.
That's right. And fired it a couple times and showing off, and somehow impressed her, because.
What I find also what I find significant, though, it seems like Jessica cared enough about her sister that if she was getting involved in the wrong crowd, she wanted to help and
Yes.
guide her in the right path. So that's showing that behavior wise, Jessica always thought that, to take the right path. What I mean by that is people can, unfortunately, people, especially when it comes to missing, they'll misjudge a person.
Yeah, they do.
If they're caught up in some type of lifestyle, well, maybe that's not the lifestyle they intended to be put in. They were probably forced into that lifestyle. So,
and that's exactly where we'll end up going with Jessie's case. And there's there's different types of human trafficking, as we know, such as forced labor, child sex trafficking, sex trafficking. But even in the grooming of women for sex trafficking, there's different ways they do it. There's if they know that the girl is maybe been poor all her life, has no money, needs money, they will woo them with wealth.
Yeah.
If they know the girl's a drug addict, they will supply her with drugs.
Yeah. And I just wanted to make sure it was important to point out that Jessica wanted to be that role model, big sister, to help guide her other sister and make sure that she was doing the right thing.
Yes, and thank you for that. That's exactly. And I believe that her, even by the time that she knew what was happening to her, though we didn't, her first thought was always to protect her loved ones, her sisters, her friends, her mom, everybody. She didn't, sometimes I think Jessie took on these types of people, because she didn't want us to have to deal with them. She thought that she could deal with them better. She thought that she could protect us. I always felt that, I still do feel that, until after Jessie went missing, we didn't know what was happening to her down there, but she sure did. When we thought she was falling in love with somebody, getting engaged to this person and having a beautiful life in one of the fanciest cities in the world, she knew that she was being beaten. She knew that she was being forced into prostitution, and she knew that she'd been arrested and that she had these fears. None of us knew that, but she did.
Right. And then that goes to what they've called conditioned behavior.
Yes.
Like you would train in the military, for example, when you have to eat at a certain time, you have to do this at a certain time. The negative applies to conditioned behavior, especially in human trafficking, where
it's grooming. They groom them to be exactly what they want and what they need them to be. And in some cases, like I say, drugs, in some cases money. There's a term for what they did to Jessie, and that's because Jessie did not use drugs. Jessie did not need money. Jessie was a 21-year-old young woman with a head full of dreams. It's called love bombing, what they did to Jessie. And they had somebody who Jessie thought was falling in love with her, and she fell in love with him, and then they had this beautiful life forming. And at that point, and we all do it when we're young and when we are falling in love, we tell that person everything.
Right.
It's like how many sisters you got, where you live, where you grew up, where your mom lives, what your mom's phone number is, probably, where your best friend is, who your best friend is, what everybody looks like, because here's all their pictures. And so by the time they've got all this knowledge and this woman is head over heels in love with them, it's just like the movies. Now you owe me, I've done all this for you. You don't think this is free. And unfortunately, that's exactly what happened with Jessie. We did jump ahead a bit because at the point that this all happened, she was in Las Vegas, and we're from Canada, so she had already been taken there. But what they did was they took her on a couple of trips that are just like trips. Everybody thinks, oh, it's a free trip and everything's gonna be, there's nothing free. And though it did not cost her financially in the beginning, there was absolutely nothing free about those two trips that Jessie was taken on. So what had happened at first, because now, we'll go back to where she's in Kamloops and she's got her little sister back on track. And, her little sister at that point was 16. So now, we've got a 16-year-old sister and an 18-year-old sister. Jessie was 21 and Jessie was still 20 and her older sister was 22. So, now she's getting the phone calls. She wants to go on these free trips. And the first one was in January of 2005, and it was to Florida. And I'm trying to explain there's no such thing as free trips to Jessie. And, she's, oh, Mom, basically you watch too much TV. So she went on this trip. The whole time she was there, I was worried, but she kept in touch with me as much as she could. And then she comes back and she's got pictures and she's got stories of the stuff that she did. She was Fort Lauderdale. She was, up in the Keys, and she was on the ocean and parasailing. And I just thought, oh, okay, this was wonderful for her. It was a great adventure. But then in near the end of February, maybe beginning of March, she's starting to talk about another trip coming up. And I said, what do you mean another trip? She goes, well, he's going to visit his mom in May, who lives in Fort Lauderdale. Actually, I kind of got that a bit backwards. He said, we're going to visit my mom on the first trip in Fort Lauderdale, but it turned out she didn't live in Florida. She lived in Edmonton, Alberta. And then the second trip was he wanted to go down to Atlantic City, and he was going to go to Manhattan and just do all the nightlife and do some gambling. So what person's going to take someone on a second free trip? I flat out asked her if he wanted to, her for sex. Did he want anything out of her? And she said nothing. Everything was fine. He was a gentleman. So when she leaves to go on the second trip at the, it's not quite the beginning of May, but it's not the middle of May yet. It was probably about the 11th or so of May.
This back in 2005?
Of 2005, yeah. So she was still 20 years old at that exact time. So she goes to New York, ends up calling me the night before she's supposed to come back. And she's in the lobby of a hotel. She's in Manhattan. She's telling me how she's quite ticked off at this guy. Am I allowed to use names at all?
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely.
Okay, his name's Donald Vaz, and if you looked up Donald Vaz, you will also find out about his older brother Lima Vaz. Same thing, he's a human trafficker. There's cases where he forced and beat 15-year-old girls, and so the whole family has got a bad way about him. So when Donald he had told her that he had lost all of his money gambling. They had their tickets, they had their flights booked for the next day, but there was no money, he said, like to eat or to do anything, take a cab if they, anything. And so he's like, so, why don't we set it up? You can go turn a trick, you can get us some quick money, you can do some prostitution and everything will be fine, and we'll get back to Canada, we'll be great. And one thing that Donald didn't know about Jessie is that Jessie had about $20,000 in the bank when she was 17. After moving to Calgary, she was hit by a car. The car turned right on a red light. She was in the crosswalk on a cross light, and so it was completely his fault. So there was a $25,000 settlement that she got at 20 years old, and she still had, she had to, pay back her dad for a car he had bought her and things, but she still had $20,000 in the bank. She just didn't tell anybody.
Right.
And so she knew that she had taxi money, and she knew that she had food money, and she had no intention of prostituting herself. And I had said to her, well, go get your own room, and in the morning, go get yourself to the airport and come home. She said, no, I'm fine. I'm going to go back up to the room. I'm not afraid of Donald. He's just an asshole, but I am not scared of him. And I'm petrified. So she goes back upstairs, and then the next morning she calls, And it's like nothing had happened. She's all giddy and happy. Oh, guess what? We're going to Las Vegas. We're not coming straight home. We're going to go to Las Vegas first. And I am astounded. I'm not sure what happened. I'm going straight to my watching too much TV, and I'm thinking he did something to her. But she kept guaranteeing me everything was fine.
I have
And
to ask. So I just want to back up real quick. So she's in Manhattan, and he tells her that he's broke. He's pretty much flat broke.
Yeah.
And that he's pretty much telling her that he would need her to turn some tricks, engage in prostitution so that they can have money.
Right.
And then the next day, everything is fine.
Exactly. Right. So
how'd she sound? A mom knows everything, right?
Yes.
I mean,
I
my
thought
mom,
I did, yeah.
my mom would know if I had a hangover the next day.
Yes.
Okay. And I could
Right.
be thousands of miles away. Would you would know, did she sound different, or was it a believable happy? Were you convinced that everything was okay?
She sounded normal. She sounded believable, but I still didn't buy it.
You had doubts.
But I'm in Western Canada. She's in Eastern USA. I had absolutely no control. I had nothing I could do other than say, call me when you get there.
And then so now they're going to Vegas after
going to Vegas, Sin City, Prostitution Central.
Gambling
I'm like,
Central, yeah. And he just lost money. Now everything's fine, and now they're going to Vegas.
Yeah. So I'm going straight to too much Law and Order. I know what's happening because, right? And she's like, oh mom. But here's the thing, okay? I had this close of a relationship with all my kids. I would have to say to my kids, no, that's too much information, right? And they're like, they're always like, oh, my mom's my best friend. But I'm always like, but you're not mine. My best friend's my own age. You know, we relate to each other in different ways. You're my kids. But see, they always thought, and I'm glad, they always thought they could tell me anything and everything, even if my ears burned. I was grateful that we had that kind of relationship.
Yeah,
exactly. So I don't know how to say it. Either I bought it hook, line, and sinker, or I had absolutely nothing I can do about it, and I had to just kind of go, okay, right? Or just a little bit of everything, and I just had to believe that I'm just shaking here. I just had to believe that she knew what she was doing, that she was smarter than maybe I was even giving her credit for. Maybe she was smarter than I even was. And I said, call me when you get to Vegas. And so the day that she got to Las Vegas, now my dates are actually coming back. It was May 13th, 2005, because her 21st birthday is May 27th, 2005. And so as soon as she got to Vegas and phoned me and said, oh, I'm going to stay here for my 21st birthday, because who doesn't want to have their 21st birthday, which is a legal age in Vegas. And so that's where she went next with this. And I say where she went next with this, Steve, because it's just one excuse after another, one story after another. And over time, I started understanding that, this is just how they rolled. I mean, they were insurance scammers. And of course, there was an insurance scammer thing in there. There was, pimps who forced their girls into lying. So obviously there was lies. And so I just, over time, I started putting more things together. But at the time, okay, so we'll go May 13th. She lands there. She phones me as she promised. And she tells me that Donald Vaz has these two friends. One is Richard Wolcott. He's from Surrey, British Columbia. He's a friend from Canada of his. And and Richard Wolcott has a girlfriend named Yvonne Huxbreton, whose nickname is Angel, and she's from California. And oh, they're wonderful, Mom. They're beautiful people. And now they're like my best friends or whatever the hell. So I said to her, well, okay, I need, you need to keep in touch with me while you're there. So now she's staying there for 2 weeks, okay, till her birthday. And now she's got this new friend. And so she's staying for these 2 weeks and keeping in touch with me, which is the only thing I'm, hanging on to.
Right.
And then over time, this girl, Yvonne, her friend Angel, and they have this friend, and his name's Peter Todd, and he's a little bit older, she said he's like, 34, and I thought, which was way too old for a 21-year-old, but I found out later he was, almost 50. So, or actually, no, I found out later he was almost 40. So he, it was, the lies had already started. But so now we have the birthday's coming up, and I know, okay, she's going to be coming home, and then, her birthday comes and goes, and she's still not planning to come home. And so, I said, well, you need to come back to Canada. And she says, oh, Mom, we were, me and Yvonne were in a car accident. We were driving down the road, and a taxi, we were following a bus, and a taxi blew a red light and T-boned us. And so now we're waiting for insurance. It was 100% the taxi's fault, and everybody on the bus witnessed it. And she had all these details about this accident and how this insurance and everything, And like I say, I found out later on that this Peter Todd guy, who she told us was a 40-year-old entrepreneur, wealthy family guy, he's actually a insurance scammer too. So, it made sense that one of his first lies to us that he had to call us with was about insurance. So, so she's got this, and then she's got this Peter guy, and now she's falling in love with this guy, and, now she's moving in with this guy, and we're only like May and June, and she's, July, and she was supposed to be coming back to Canada in by September now. She's like, oh, I'm going to bring my new boyfriend. You're going to love him. Oh, Mom, we're engaged. I'm going to bring my fiance. So and this is how it went, right? It wasn't like,
so
she would lead me into things. It's just like, oh, we're engaged. Look at my ring.
Yeah. So I want to just backtrack so everybody can understand.
Oh yeah, please do.
She goes to, she's gone to Manhattan. She's gone to Vegas, and it was with this, what was his name again?
Donald Vaz.
Donald
Vaz.
Vaz.
Yeah, V-A-Z.
So they weren't dating. They were just, it was like a friendship, so to speak.
Right. And she swore up and down, even after he had come back to Canada, and she swore up and down there had never been anything in a sexual way between them ever. She always said that.
So while she's in Vegas, Donald was back in Canada. Was he going back and forth? He
came back, yeah, pretty quickly after leaving her. I'll say in the clutches of Richard Wolcott and Yvonne Huxbreton and Peter Todd. Like he left her with those two, and then they introduced her to Peter Todd. And after Jessie went missing, we found out that Peter Todd is a well-known pimp. He's known as a violent pimp by the Las Vegas police, by the Vice Squad, by the Pandering Squad. But of course, at the time, we didn't know any of this. And I'll also tell you a couple of little things that, because it's always circumstantial things. It's always the little details that really can add the story up.
Absolutely.
He didn't actually live in Las Vegas. His house was in North Las Vegas. And to explain that a little bit, because North Las Vegas is smaller police station. They don't have a Vice Squad. They don't have, any of that. There's another young woman whose case is so similar to Jessie. She went missing May 5th of 2005. So just, days before Jessie was taken to Las Vegas, Lindsay Marie Harris went missing. Lindsay Marie Harris's story is Jessie, but she's from New York State. Blonde hair, blue eyes, beautiful, fell in love with some rich guy. That her guy was supposed to be like a music guy, and moved to Las Vegas with him, and then after a year, she goes missing. Now Lindsay went missing May 5th of 2005, and 3 years later, remains that had been found 3 weeks after she went missing were identified as Lindsay's. It took 3 years and a tattoo, but all they found of Lindsay were her legs and a tattoo on her hip. ID'd her. So she went missing in Las Vegas. Her legs were found 3 weeks later in Illinois, right? So now, then you got Jessie showing up in Las Vegas, May 13th, 2005, looking exactly the same as Lindsay. We've never connected them specifically other than holy crow, you know?
Did you think that the gentleman that Jessie went to Vegas with, did you believe that he had pretty much, and I hate to use this word, pretty much sold her, or she was kind of pawned off to this older gentleman?
Yeah, I kind of think that. Okay, Richard Wolcott from Canada, from BC, right? And Donald Vaz from Edmonton, Alberta, Calgary, Alberta. That's the very next province over from us. They knew each other from Canada. So I think he got Jessie to Las Vegas and left Jessie with those two. I don't know if at that point it was sold, but I think they sold her to Peter Todd.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was right away. But you see, at the time, we didn't know. Okay, so at the time, human trafficking was still children in Cambodia. Human trafficking was not, in Canada and the United States.
It wasn't mainstream in North America.
It was not like it is now. And I'm going to tell you something right now, Steve, because I never take a lot of credit for anything. I give Jessie all the credit because, it's her life and it was her disappearance that just prompted me. And I am just the mom, and I am no different than your mom would be or anyone's mom. I just went to the next level and took it there. But my husband, he will sit here and he will look you in your eyes and he will tell you that until Jessie went missing, and my wife started raising awareness to human trafficking, North America really knew nothing about it, and that he will tell people, he's such a dear man, that my wife, Gleneden, made all of North America know what human trafficking is. And he's such a sweetheart man, but there's no taking that away from him, right? He don't care. He said it was. Look at it. Look at how it was.
You're the torchbearer. In his eyes, you're the torchbearer. Yeah.
In my eyes, so I was looked at like, okay, let's just pretend I'm telling you about my daughter and she's been trafficked, and I'm sitting here going, and I got a friend next day. Okay, just let her be. It's all she's got, let her hang on to this weird tale that seems to have intrigued her, as far-fetched as it seems. And, it'll be okay, Gleneden. Just whatever gets you to the next day. Right. And that's kind of how I was treated and how I looked at it. And now it's like, will you educate my daughter on what happened to your daughter so that my daughter doesn't end up trafficked like your daughter was? So, but it's been 15 years. We're not talking like, oh, this shift happened. Like, this is 15 years. I don't care how long it's been. I have seen detectives come and go. I have seen private investigators come and go. I have seen missing persons organizations come and go. I have seen Facebook groups come and go. And by come and go, I mean come and do everything they can to help us, and then end up not knowing what to do next. She disappeared. And then they kind of they don't, slink off into the whatever. They continue to raise Jessie's awareness and will continue until she's found, or till the day every one of us are gone off this earth. But they just know that they just aren't going to be the ones that are going to find her. And then there'll be another group that'll come in and take over and help us and do everything they can. And that's why I have always called Jessie the most well-known unknown missing person, because a lot of people after 15 years know who Jessie Foster is, but there's still a lot who don't. But those of us who know all about her, we are active in this. We work with missing persons cases. We post on Facebook cases. We talk to people like yourself. And we just don't let it go. And then, we've got kids who are, 20 years old this year who were 5 when she went missing,
Yeah.
So her case has got the longevity because that's my kid, damn it. And no one's gonna do this to me and have me go, okay, I've given it all I got. I'm not a missing persons group. I can't pass it on to the next group. This is my kid. She came out of my stomach. And it sounds corny, but think of it, right? I will find Jessie or die trying, and literally because I will find her or I will die trying. I'm not a martyr. I'm not exaggerating. I'm a mom.
Right. Did you think that it was that law enforcement at the beginning of their investigation, did they think that, because again, we're talking about the beginning of hearing about it in North America around this time, did they think this was something that might have been just far-fetched? And
yep. Here's exactly what happened, because the traffickers at that time were smarter than any of us, right? Now, you are so good at your job. I am so good at my job. And the traffickers are really good at their jobs.
Yep.
And that's the one thing that I say. Over the years, I have given so many speeches, so many talks, so many awareness conferences. And the one thing that I will always say is they are smart. The pimps and the traffickers are smart. They have handbooks. They learn as they go. They know how to separate the girls. They know how to, spot a girl stepping off a Greyhound if she doesn't have someone there to meet her. They know their next victims just because they are so good at what they do. And so when Jessie went missing, what they did is they took her to North Las Vegas. And I'll add one more thing about Lindsay Marie Harris's case. She was living in Henderson, right? So you've got women half hour's drive from the Strip. But when they went missing, they did not have the Las Vegas Police Department on their cases. They had little itty bitty Henderson and little itty bitty North Las Vegas. They didn't even have all the different departments that large departments have. And the first officer on Jessie's case, Detective Malner, by the time I sat down in front of him, and that was, I always thought I wasn't going to find her by going to Las Vegas, because I'm not going to be the one that goes and sees and finds her. So it took me from the time she went missing until October of 2006. Jessie went missing March of 2006. It took me until October to go to Las Vegas physically. And then the next time I went was in January of 2007. But when I went there in 2006, and I'm sitting there across from Detective Malner at his office. Now I've had, April, May, June, July, August, and September. And in those 6 months, Jessie's been in dozens of newspaper articles. She's been in 2 documentaries already. She's been in at least 1 book. I was already beginning to be educated on human trafficking. I was not myself just learning. I was myself already learning. I've already learned. And so I said to him, well, here's the thing, right? Jessie was forced into prostitution. We know this because in July, she was beaten. Her jaw was broken, and she was arrested once for one count. And then in September, she was arrested again on 4 separate counts, 4 charges more of solicitation and breaching trespass in the big hotels and casinos on the strip. I said, so either she's, trying to get arrested and get sent back to Canada, or she's Las Vegas's stupidest prostitute, because, something's going on here. She's either trying to, get sent home or something, but the bottom line is she's getting arrested in Las Vegas, and they're taking her back to North Las Vegas, where she goes to sleep at night. And he goes, well, you're mistaken. Prostitution happens on the strip. It doesn't happen in North Las Vegas. All right. Prostitution happens everywhere. I had been working with Crime Stoppers here in Kamloops, and before that day, I had given a talk at a place called Boston Bar, British Columbia. It's such a small place that there's one school, kindergarten through 12. And there was an incident where a girl had been trafficked, and she came back after 3 weeks, and she was right messed up. And they just wanted, and this was a little First Nations town, and it's right along the highway, #1, and they needed their kids to be educated. And I went there, and with Crime Stoppers, and we educated these kids. And I said, so you're telling me that Boston Bar, British Columbia, knows about human trafficking, and you don't? So, no. He's still, to this day, he's not the cop anymore. North Las Vegas to this day has had the attitude that Jessie Foster is a Canadian woman who chose to come down to their beautiful country, to their beautiful state and their beautiful city, and ply her trades illegally. And whatever happened to her was what she had coming, because if she hadn't have done this wouldn't have happened to her. And they don't take any of the blame, because what happens in Las Vegas stays in Las Vegas, right? No, God forbid. How can you have it both ways? How can you say she chose to do it, yet what happens there stays there? It's not even, to me, funny that they can have this great problem that goes on there and then just think it happens to every other woman, but not Jessie Foster, because she's Canadian, so she deserved it.
The difference between human trafficking and prostitution, to me, is that generally human trafficked people, especially sex trafficking, they're forced to do it. They don't get any of the proceeds.
No.
They're pretty much, pardon my language, they're half-ass fed, half-ass boarded, half-ass taken care of, and they're working more than they're resting. Right. Prostitution, the girls that engage in this freely, they're doing it for the money.
And they're choosing to, which is fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who cares? But what you said about that, not getting the money and everything, on April 18th, 2010, I started an organization called MATH, Mothers Against Trafficking Humans. And one of my little slogans, and it's been 11 years this month, in a few days. So I'm not gonna, I don't have it in front of me, but one of the things is, it's math. It's Mothers Against Trafficking Humans, but do the math. Someone's getting rich and it ain't the girls. Nope. Do the math, right? It's not the people being forced, being beaten, and the ones that go missing when they try to leave or when they just aren't pulling their own weight anymore. And I want to tell you one other thing too, because prostitution, as I just said, is, if it's a choice, I don't care. I'm a cleaner. I don't know a lot of people who choose to clean 20 toilets in one day, but I do, because I'll clean a commercial building and I love it. I get paid $25 an hour. I feel like I'm making a fortune, and it's the easiest job in the world. But you know what? There's a lot of women who wouldn't do that. And there's a lot of women who wouldn't prostitute themselves so that they could feed their children or pay for their schooling so they could become a registered nurse or whatever they do. And that's their decision. Now, several years ago, well, from the beginning of Canada's time until several years ago, not 7, Canada did not have a law against prostitution, strangely enough. But nobody really knew this, because we had other laws that made it look like prostitution was illegal. We, like pandering and, security, which is, pimping and talking about it and paying somebody. Those were all, those were all the illegal laws around the one legal law, which was getting paid for sex. So there was this woman and a few other people, this woman, Terry Bedford, and several years ago, Terry Bedford took the Supreme Court of Canada to court to protect her right to be a prostitute that she says she's chosen to do since she was 16. But I'll tell you, when she was 16, she was underage and her mother's boyfriend made her do it. So now that she's choosing at 50 doesn't mean she chose at 16, right?
Right.
But now she wants to be able to do it freely, and she wants to be able to have a pimp. She wants to have a we call them I don't know what we call them, but a brothel, a body house, and
Right.
then also have a pimp or security, right? So she takes the Supreme Court of Canada. All those laws are struck down. So for a short time, Canada had no laws protecting us against prostitution, pimping, the Johns, or anything. And myself and many of the women who started organizations up here in Canada to educate on human trafficking and to help survivors start their lives over again, we went against this, right? She's trying to get the law completely wiped out. We want to have the laws changed, but we want them in place. So I was so grateful to be invited to the first set of speakers, and it was to the Justice Committee, and it was in Ottawa, which is our country's capital. And I talked about Jessie, and I talked about math, and I talked about everything, and then I went home, and then over time they started planning their second meeting, which was the Senate committee. And after the Senate committee, the senators would decide whether the laws would be changed. So all these women were being invited back to speak about the law. Now, mine is a heartfelt story. I don't know a lot about laws. I don't know anything about bills and how they become laws. And, all I know is that here in Canada, a MP, a member of parliament's bill, has a snowball's chance of hell of passing into law. And that's what this one was. And lo and behold, I was invited to speak at the Senate committee, and Jessie's story was told again. And after the Senate committee broke and then they came back, we had a new law in Canada, and prostitution was now illegal. But there was some stipulations that went around it, and that was, if you chose to do it, and if you did it and you stayed away from children, like playgrounds, and if you were cool about it, they'd stay away from you. But if anybody's being forced into it, then that's where the laws were going to really kick in. And so this new law kicked into place. This new law was nicknamed Jessie's Law, because everybody that tried to bring this law in knew Jessie in their heart. She was their sister, their daughter, their friend. And so now we have a law, and for the first time in the history of our country, prostitution is not legal in Canada, and it's named after my own daughter. I mean, how absolutely amazing is that? And we're still fighting to keep that law, because as we know, laws can be dropped as easily as they can be brought in.
Yes,
and there are a lot of people who don't want that law in existence, but it's still there. And just to let you know that the MP whose bill that was, Joy Smith, she had a second snowball pass through hell, as she had another bill pass into law here in Canada before she retired. So God bless you, Joy, my beautiful friend. I could if I could turn everything, you would see a picture of her and I up there on the wall. But yeah, so, I kind of jumped back and forth from Jessie's, primary school and her belching to her dancing to being trafficked. But the thing is, that's what happened with Jessie's case, right? We've had laws change, we've had people become aware, we've had so much happen. And because of Jessie's case and because of my tenacity, I guess, too, her case actually can fit into many different scenarios. And so she's not, my mom's side of the family is First Nations. So Jessie's very well known with all the missing and murdered Indigenous women's groups up here in Canada, the Highway of Tears, all the things that we do to raise awareness here. She's also very well known in Las Vegas with, missing prostitutes. She's known, just so many different things that touch base with Jessie, that her case can kind of glide through on all of those scenarios. And it's because of that we have got a fair amount of media and success on it, including the video that you mentioned at the beginning. It's called Jessie Foster, Vanishing Point. And if I could have like 1 minute on that topic, this is how Jessie's touched people. The two women who wrote and produced that documentary, one of them is the younger sister of a schoolmate of Jessie's from Calgary. And she's because she's the younger sister, when Jessie went missing, the family did a lot of talking about Jessie's case after it was in the news. And then over time, when the younger sister graduates out of high school and goes into journalism school, excuse me, she has an option to do a this documentary with another young woman. They were still in university when they did it. And, her sister had made her promise that when she became a journalist that she would do something about Jessie. So this documentary was actually, she was still in school, but it was so well done that the university has still got the website up. And then a couple of years after it came out, they were nominated, and they were down in Texas winning an award for that documentary. And so it's just, it's been a phenomenal thing. I mean, people who knew Jessie way back when, people who are just hearing about her now, everybody wants it to be.
I thought it was well done. I watched it twice, if I'm being honest, because I watched it the first time to get the information, but I was kind of caught up in the feelings, how the family got to speak, how they went down to hand out, the group that went down and looking for her.
Yeah.
And I watched it again because I kind of got caught up in the feelings of the case. What really pisses me off about cases like Jessie's is, first of all, nobody asks to go missing. One, right. Nobody asks to get trafficked. It happens. And I don't understand for the life of me how we as human beings get shuffled into groups. Everybody likes to categorize us.
Right.
There's the runaways, there's the mentally ill, there's the criminal, there's the free spirits or the prostitutes. Yeah. And instead of labeling us all and putting us in pens, using that as a terminology, of course. Yeah. Why can't we just be compassionate human beings, whether we're from Canada, the States, Europe? The thing is that there are people, Jessica, and there are other Jessicas out there that aren't getting the and again, good for you for being the standard for keeping her case up front and in the media, because there are people that don't know how to do it. There are people that don't understand that it takes a lot of strength. It takes a lot of tenacity, you said earlier. And a lot of people they get so overwhelmed because they don't know what to do. And you've kept her case in the limelight. It's hard to not speak of a trafficking case and not hear of Jessie's story. I wanted to ask you quickly, where is Jessie's case now with law enforcement? Is it considered a cold case? What's being done?
Well, Jesse's case is definitely not a cold case because there's still things happening. The only people that haven't done any work on her case are the ones who are actually legally responsible for it, and that's North Las Vegas.
Right.
They put her in her pen, as you say, and they were her judge and jury, and her sentence was obviously either to be missing or dead, and without any justice. Whereas I've had police officers from Henderson who have gone over and above. I've had police officers from Illinois. I have police officers from Indianapolis. I've had police officers from Florida. And I can't even begin to tell you all the other places that have had compassion and have done things. We've had a lot of people who've tried to scam us out of money and out of this and that and the other thing. And through that's how I became connected with a detective in Henderson. And we also have, because of our forensic artist, Diana Trepkov, who has continuously done age enhancements of Jessie. I've watched Jessie age over the last 15 years because of Diana. And Diana is a former RCMP officer, and she's very well known, and she does a lot of cases around the world. And one of her friends is a former New York City detective who is also a former FBI agent, and now he's a private investigator, Gil Alba. And she touched bases between Gil and I. And now there's not a thing that happens that before I don't even send it to North Las Vegas. If something happens, before I tell my husband or my kids, I tell Diana and I tell Gil and I tell that detective. And then between them, between the RCMP in Diana and the detective and the FBI agent in Gil and the detective in the other officer, they guide me in the direction to go on it. I mean, we found, like, one of them, we literally found like a so-called Henderson resident was using a voice over IP phone that was routed out of Chicago, Illinois, that was routed out of Kenya, but yet they were telling us that they were walking by Jesse's grave on a daily basis. So you never know unless you have the way to find this all out. And if this guy was walking by that every day, then there's no reason why his phone's coming from around the world. So her case is, it's probably just sitting in a dusty old cold file in North Las Vegas, but it's anything but cold. I have actually been so discouraged by North Las Vegas, by them not taking tips, by me trying to talk to them and being so distraught that I am in tears and sobbing while I'm talking to them. I'm trying to tell them that I've left them messages to please check the message because I was so distraught I couldn't even talk to them. And the responses I get from them, disgusting. It's this one specific example is I had to get a tip. They needed to call this man. This man thought he had a very good tip. So I thought it was good too. But over time, his surgery date was getting closer. His surgery was not just, going to get a tooth pulled. There was a chance he didn't make it.
Right.
And he needed this tip to be told to the police just in case he didn't make it. And when they wouldn't call him back and wouldn't call him back and wouldn't call him back, he finally contacted me. And then I kept trying to contact them and they never answered me. And I would leave messages where I'd be crying. And so finally, at this one point, I ended up talking to this female detective who was the new detective on Jesse's case at the time. And I'm saying to her, I really need to talk to you. I've left messages. I've been just so distraught. She says to me, oh yeah, I heard that message. And then she goes, as a matter of fact, we all did. And so to me, that told me that not only were they taking me so low on their ladder of caring, that they were sitting around laughing at the messages I was leaving them and listening to them in a group, not just, because they all heard me, right? If you all heard me, then how come nobody called me back? If you all heard me crying and sobbing and barely legible because I was so distraught, why did you not call me back? And that's how I get treated by North Las Vegas.
That shows zero compassion for what you're going through as a mother.
It's disgusting.
And what really pisses me off is, as these are the people that we need to go to help when
Yes.
things like this go wrong, and then to have them totally shine you on and then berate you for being a caring mother about your daughter,
Yeah.
who
It's
is involved in a situation that we know to be factually she didn't ask to be put in that position.
yeah.
And then I just think that's the lowest of low,
Yeah.
and that needs to change. So if
It does.
anybody wanted to,
Can I say one more thing that I am always so happy when I watch any kind of documentary thing, whether it's 48 hours, whether it's just whatever. I see police officers and I just want to hug them. You've got the one guy who wasn't going to shave until he found the killer, and he didn't shave. He had a beard like yours, Steve, and finally they found the killer and he shaved. And then you got the people who put the picture up on their wall and every day they see it. And I just want to hug them and kiss them. I don't even care if it's COVID. I just love those kind of police officers. And there's lots out there. I just don't know why, but for some reason, I don't know if it's North Las Vegas. I don't know if it's just the notes that they've left in Jessie's case in their files, and that's given the wrong impressions. And everybody who reads it next starts off where they left off, hating her and hating me. I don't know what it is, but I just want to say that there are so many good cops, and I see so many wonderful endings, and some of them, yes, they are 15 years and 20 years and longer. If Jessie's not alive, there still doesn't mean that we don't want to find her, and we still don't want to know what happened. And I've gone 15 years. I was 48 years old when Jessie went missing. I am 63 years old today. Wow. I don't know how old you are, Steve.
43, man.
43. So literally from your age to my age, the cops that laugh at me, I would like to see them live through what I've lived through. I would like to see them be as strong as a victim as they think they are as the detective in charge of the case.
Gleneden, in my opinion, is a powerhouse, and she knows what she's talking about. She's had to learn about trafficking, all the disgusting terms, and the ins and outs of an underworld that has taken her daughter away. I have said this on my podcast, and I'll continue to say it here on this show. No one, no matter their place in life or the choices that they've made, no one deserves to be missing and tossed away without anyone looking for them. In Jessie's case, she didn't choose to be sex trafficked. She didn't choose to be forced in a life of prostitution. She didn't choose to have someone make her vanish without a trace, losing all contact with her family. What she does deserve, and what her family deserves, is for law enforcement to part ways with all the stigmas and do the job mothers and families demand, hope, and ask. And that's law enforcement find their loved one. Jessica Edis Louise Foster, aka Jessie, went missing from Las Vegas, Nevada, March 28, 2006. She was last seen near the 1000 block of Cornerstone Place in Vegas. Jessie is 5'6", 120 pounds. She has a pierced nostril, pierced ears, and eyebrow. Jessie's teeth are also capped. If you have any information on the whereabouts of Jessie, please send an email to gleneden@shaw.ca, and she will get the information to the authorities. And if you need to, you can remain anonymous. I want to thank Gleneden for joining me in discussing Jessie's case. In the coming weeks, we will continue with more stories of the missing, as well as stories of those who were found. Our mission is simple, is to continue to be the media for the missing, a voice for the voiceless, in search of the truth. I'm Steve Stone, and this has been the Weekly Remind. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit that notification bell, and like the video.